Welcome to Om Times TV, a division of Om Times Media and Broadcasting. Welcome to Ascending with Venus Castleberg, a space where we explore the journey of spiritual awakening, expanding your consciousness and raising your frequency to create a whole new world. We'll dive into the possibilities that open up when you choose to follow the whispers and trust your inner knowing. Each episode is designed to guide you in expanding your awareness, tuning into your intuition, and discovering the magic of your life every day. We'll talk about living aligned with your soul's purpose, going beyond limitations and creating a life and a world worth celebrating. You are here to embrace who you truly are and step into the infinite potential that's waiting for you. Let's ascend together. And now, here is your host, Venus Castleberg.
Hello, beautiful people. I am so happy to be here with you all. And I have one of my favorite people on the planet with me. So how did I get so lucky? Anthony Mattis. Wow, we go back it seems like forever. At least probably 7 years ago, Anthony introduced me to modality and access consciousness called Talk to the Entities, and changed my entire world. And then he also did a 3-day body class, also changed my world. Just somebody who I really have always felt had my back. Definitely he cares about people. He cares about making a difference in the world, changing the world for better. And he uses some amazing tools and partners up with Access Consciousness, which I'm sure we'll talk about today. But I'm just truly honored to have him on the show today. Welcome, Anthony.
Thank you, Venus. Thank you.
Yeah.
I adore you as well, and I'm grateful for you showing up in my life.
So we have some wonderful guests. Hi, Gither. Hi, Amanda. Hi, Simon. I just like to say hi to everybody who comes.
Hi, everybody.
Yep. And thank you guys for coming. And just so you know, you can call in today. So the number is 202-570-7057. And we will allow you to call in if you have questions. But first, let me question Anthony a little bit, and then we'll open it up for those of you who want to talk. Hi, Kelly. Welcome. So, Anthony, I asked you on the show because I personally, I became a clairvoyant medium when I turned 30, pretty much overnight. It was random. I didn't expect it, and I definitely had I think I'm going crazy. But I know that your story is a little unique. So I would love maybe for you to just kind of introduce yourself and how did you get started on this? Only because I know the back end story. How did you get started on this path of alternate healthcare? I know you were a chiropractor. Yeah, so let's start there.
Yeah, well, I always, ever since I was little, when I realized I was never going to be a professional athlete, I just didn't have the body type or the athleticism for it. And then I'm like, well, what am I going to do? What am I going to be when I grow up? And so there was always this pull. I always knew I wanted to help people. And I always had this sense that there was more available to life and living than what was being presented to us. Just going through traditional schools and all that kind of stuff, right?
Right.
And in religions and all that. And, and I remember I also had a lot of questions about religion and life after death. And, my parents just kind of put me through whatever their religion was, even though they didn't practice it. But I had questions. I had questions about spirituality. I had questions about life after death. What happens when you die? So I was just always interested in what was beyond the physical realm. And at the same time, I always had this sense that there was something more available to us in the physical realm beyond drugs and alcohol, let's just say. So, I go, you go through school as you do, and most of us go through traditional schools, and things are changing now because there's different programs for kids today compared to what was available when I was a kid. And, but I'm like, man, I'm not finding there's nothing that I'm finding that quite matches that energy of what I knew was available. And then anyway, and then I went to school for exercise physiology. Went to chiropractic school. And again, part of the reason why I chose to be a chiropractor and I chose the school that I went to, because there's all different types of chiropractic schools. Some are very like mechanistic oriented. And then some are like what we call vitalistic oriented, right? So there's more like philosophy. There's more about looking at like, okay, what is the cause for our bodies to fall apart? And so they were all about like, these other schools were more about like a lot of the esoteric stuff. I'm like,
Mm.
oh, that's really cool. The power that made the body heals the body. I like that. That's really cool. And really recognizing the gift, the consciousness that's within our bodies, this innate intelligence that is inborn in all of us, no matter in nature, you see it everywhere. So that was something like, okay, I'm on the right track finally. And then I remember like the first book I ever read, I think like from, beginning to end, I couldn't put it down, was like the Celestine Prophecy, right? And they like the auras and the energies. And when you talk to people, they may be saying one thing, but what is the energy that's really coming out? I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so me. So then I got involved with metaphysical stuff, and then I had a guru from India. I did my chants and my meditations and all these different things. I did non-denominational Christianity there for a while, and then I met a woman that was sort of on this awesome path as well, and I found myself perpetually frustrated as a chiropractor though, because like people were coming to me with like musculoskeletal stuff, and I wanted to talk to them about the cause. They're like, just get me out of pain. I don't care about the cause. And I'm like, this is boring. And there are chiropractors out there that have been able to find a way to do these different things through chiropractic, which is really awesome. And anyway, my wife at the time, she struggled with mental illness, bipolar disorder. I should say more like mental awareness, but we didn't know that at the time. And she eventually took her life 10 years into our relationship or marriage. And, we had 3 kids, and, I'm a single father. And I'm like, for someone who has been doing all this inner work, um, both allopathically and alternatively, and she
Mhm.
still ends up dead and spiritually, right? I'm like, what the fuck? I don't know. Sorry if I'm like, what the, like, seriously? And I'm like, okay, God, what's the joke? Joke's on me. I see like regular people just doing regular things and they're happy. And I'm sitting here working my ass off to do all this inner work. I've had beautiful supernatural experiences and all the different respective things I was involved in, like beautiful supernatural experiences. And yet I had nothing to show for it. Like it was nothing in my everyday life that was sort of bearing the fruits of my labor, so to speak. I was still struggling financially. My wife was got to a state of hopelessness, and I was really disappointed. And I remember praying to God. I'm like, I'm going to go outside the box again. If it means I go to hell, because Christians have strong points of view that if you do anything outside of that, then it's automatically demonic, right?
Yeah.
So I was like, I don't care. I have nothing to show for it, right? So she's dead. What else is possible? There's got to be something that can access those places where I'm stuck that I haven't been able to get to in any of the other things that I've done. And I'm like, please show me. And if it means me going outside of the religious box, I'm going to do it. And so then this thing called Access Consciousness comes along. It was created by Gary Douglas, the founder, and the co-creator, Dr. Dane here. And I remember the gal was saying something like, if you're someone who's been to therapy, you've looked at things consciously, you looked at even the unconscious mind or the subconscious mind, you've peeled away those different layers, and your life is still the same, it's because it's energetic. There's something over here. It's like a nucleated sphere, if you will. You have to get to like the energetic source point in order for it to change here. And I'm like, that's it. That's where I'm screwed up. It might be like trans-dimensional or whatever. Who knows what the words are, right? And so that intrigued me. And so that's where I first learned about the Access Consciousness bars, which deals with these 32 points on the head that you just gently touch. And what it's designed to do is to sort of like remove the unconsciousness and anti-consciousness around areas of money, healing, sadness, joy, aging, creativity, you name it. And I was like, okay. And then they had this like weird, they have this, weird clearing statement. I'm like, well, I'm definitely not saying that. That might be like the weirdest thing that I've ever done so far. And I spoke in tongues in church. I've had gurus. I did bird calls every day, and I think in this access consciousness clearing statement is like way too weird for me. So I was like an in the closet access person, right? I was like, I'm just going to go for the hands-on stuff. I'm a chiropractor. That's all I'm going to learn. Forget about this verbal facilitation stuff. But then my life just started changing, and I'm like, maybe I should start doing these verbal clearings and everything. And then they started talking about like entities, and I'm like, oh, you guys do this stuff too? And but I resisted that because that wasn't an area where I felt like I had a capacity for. Like I knew I had a capacity with energy work. I knew I had a capacity to work with people's bodies with my hands, and I knew I had a capacity to speak with people, to maybe give them tools verbally. I knew I had that. But when it came to like the spirit world, I would pay for like to go to like a medium like yourself to get answers or whatever. And so then I learned that everybody has the ability to perceive, know, being, receive the spirit world. I was like, oh, really? And a lot of the people that I would go to for these sorts of things too, it was wonderful. And I would say almost always I got what I needed to get out of it. But again, it didn't like transcend or transition into my everyday life. Right. And I would always use them as the source. So I'll never forget the day that my late wife started to slip into an episode. She was having a panic attack, and I literally asked her, I'm like, "Hey, what's going on? Like what triggered it?" And she's like, "I don't know. I just looked over there at this beautiful couple, and we were outside. The kids were going skateboarding. We had our new puppy. We were walking our 2.5-year-old daughter, and she's having a panic attack out of the blue. I'm like, what triggered it?" And she's like, "I don't know, like something, I looked at this couple over there and it was like something jumped off of them onto me or into me." But at the time, I didn't know about access consciousness. We were still very much involved in the church. And she was like, there was like a demon that jumped in there. So at the time, I was like, not possible. We have the breastplate, we have the blood of Christ on us, and, it should repel demons and blah, blah, blah. And look, you're whether it was a demon or not, that was her point of view, right? And as you know, our point of view creates a reality. Now, I was like, not possible, because we were doing the Christian thing. And then I'm like, I'm gonna be really pissed at God if this is true. And then so 7 months later, she decides to take her life. I mean, a day before, she's like, look, I don't want you and the kids. This was her third episode in her lifetime. And I had dealt with two of them. And we were disappointed that the alternative stuff didn't really help. And the modern medicine didn't help. And I think she just thought she was a lost cause, and she didn't want us to have to deal with that as a family anymore. And so by the time I got to Access, I had a lot of questions. I wanted to know, okay, what the hell did she go through that made her brain just flip a switch? Right. And so modern science will say, well, that's just innate. This is what they told me back then, which was back in 2011. Well, that's just the nature of the illness. It can go into remission, and then it just comes back whenever it wants. Well, that's to me, that's bullshit. Okay. It comes back for a reason. The question is, we may not know what the reason is, right? And knowing what I know now, because of the tools of access, that someone's awareness, like when you have a floodgate of awareness open onto you, and you don't have any tools to handle that awareness, you will be at the effect of it. And now, knowing what I know that that's exactly what she was going on, and she was correct. It was a demon, and you know what? We did everything we knew to do at the time to get rid of it, but it didn't work, and she just kept spiraling and spiraling and kept getting worse, even with modern medicine. And so she decided to leave. But as I went through this journey with Access, I learned a lot about how, some of us are just built different, right? We receive and perceive the world around us very uniquely compared to, let's say, just a normal person,
Yeah.
or they would say normal,
Right.
and whatever that means. And unfortunately, not, I would say that, there hasn't been sort of like these playgrounds or these schools to help people develop their sensitivity to the world
Mm.
around them. And yeah, so I started to really recognize and acknowledge what it was that she was going through, but she wasn't able to express to anybody because she didn't want them to think she was a psychopath, or and she felt like a psychopath, and that was part of the thing. And yeah, so I decided to become a talk to the entities facilitator, which is interesting because, like I said, most of the people who presented this type of information to me, it was more of an esoteric way, but it was never in a pragmatic way. Like, okay, well, how can I use this in my everyday life? How do
Mm.
I use this when I'm struggling with anxiety? How do I use this when I'm struggling with insomnia? How do I use this when I'm having a bad day for no logical reason? Right. And so it really helped me to not only recognize that I do have a capacity in this area, but to also be able to change things like anxiety, melancholia,
Mm.
even pains or quote unquote intensities in my body that don't belong to me. It's my awareness of things about the world, both seen and unseen around me. So that's been fun. And yeah, so that's sort of like a long story to your question there.
No, that was great. I love it. So, just out of curiosity, I think at one point I heard you say that you did eventually like hear from your wife, right? Like when
Well,
she on the other side.
it, again, before access, there were times where it was crazy. She was always fascinated with like 11:11, on the
Mhm.
clock, and I know that's like a thing and whatever. And when she died, it's all I saw. And she
Right.
always loved reggae. Always loved
Mm.
reggae. So there would be like little signs even before I started access, right?
Mm.
So I couldn't deal with Christmas. I'm not going to torture myself and to have Christmas, like do traditional Christmas. I'm taking the kids to Disney World. That's what I decided to do, just so I don't torture myself, right? And the moment we get in the car on our way to Florida, Bob Marley's on playing the radio. I'm like, wait a minute. I listen to sports radio all day long. How the hell is Bob Marley playing? I don't even listen to regular music. I listened to talk sports radio back then. And I was like, okay, she's approving us going. And then we went into the gift shop. And the first t-shirt I see with people's names on it is Jessica. So it was like little things like that. And then like the lights would flicker and I'm like, is that you? And then it would stop. Yeah. So it was like interesting things like that. And then I remember one day I was having major insomnia, and I had already been in access for about a year and a half. And I'm like, what the hell's going on? I never have insomnia. Not even like when she died. Like I was exhausted from the stress of it. I slept okay. And I couldn't go to sleep. And I was paranoid and I was blah, blah, blah. And so I actually called Gary Douglas, the founder of Access Consciousness. I'm like, hey, I know you say like 99% of your thoughts, feelings, and emotions don't belong to you, but I'm really struggling. This sure feels like me, and I never have insomnia. And he goes, well, didn't your wife have something similar? Didn't you tell me that she didn't sleep for 5 months because her heart rate was beating at like 120 beats a minute, like at rest? And I'm
Mm.
like, yeah, yeah, yeah. He's like, okay, so are you aware of her presence?
Mm.
I was like, oh, yeah. And it happened to be the month of December.
Mm.
And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, okay, does she have a message for you? And I'm still freaking out because I'm too busy making it about me and what I'm feeling. I'm like, I don't know,
Mhm.
I don't know. And he's like, well, didn't she have insomnia before she died? I'm like, yeah, she did. She didn't sleep for 7 months. He's like, wasn't she paranoid? I'm like, yeah. He's like, okay. He's like, that's your awareness of her presence. I'm
Mm.
like, oh. He's like, what if you were willing to really be aware of her? Would you then have these symptoms if you were willing just to have the awareness? I'm like,
Right.
oh shit. And he's like, does she have a message for you? I'm like, I don't know. It's okay. And he's like,
Mm.
is she trying to say goodbye?
Mm.
And I just went, and I just cried. And in that moment, all that angst, all the head tripping, gone.
Mm.
Once we were able to shine the light of awareness on what was going on. And it was through asking questions, and it was beautiful. And now, since then, she's come to me in my dreams a lot.
Mm.
And I would say for the first 7 years of me, I've been in access consciousness for 13 years. I would say for the first 7 years of that, she would show up still sick looking.
Mm. Mm.
And I'm like, okay, maybe, maybe she's still healing, in maybe she knew something where she needed to leave. Because I called before access, I called the medium and I'm like, hey, and she's like, I don't know. She says that she chose because she could be of better service to you and the kids over there than had she
Mm.
stayed. And I'm like, oh my God. And this is not to, condone, suicide, y'all. Please don't take that as a thing, okay? There is hope. So don't take that. But anyway, but sometimes there's a double-edged sword to things, there's this, it's like you have this coin and there's two sides to it. So it was sort of a curse and a blessing at the same time, if there's such thing, right?
Mhm.
So and then I'll never forget the last dream that I had. And it's been a while since I had one, but she was glowing.
Mm.
And I woke up and I had tears in my eyes because she just looked beautiful, like the way she always did. She was just glowing. She didn't have the dark circles. And I called up Gary Douglas again, the founder of Access, and I'm like, hey, I had this dream and this is what showed up. And he's like, well, he's like, did she go to the light or did she go get a new body? I'm like, I don't get that. I don't get that. I get that she still wants to be around the kids.
Mhm.
Because it was always important for her. She said because she wanted to watch them grow up and especially be there for them during their teenage years. And every time they would be, when my adult boy, they're adult children now, they're 24, 22, and then my daughter's 16. But once they got to these phases, I'm like, man, your mom really wanted to be a part of this, and I would feel sad, but I knew it was her sadness, so I knew that she was there.
Mm.
And anyway, so in this dream, she was healed, and I talked to Gary about it. He's like, is she healed? And then
Mm.
again, I just cried. I'm like, yeah. And he's like, will you acknowledge that what you've been choosing, meaning me, going to all these classes with access, because this was actually part of our dream together, was to travel the world facilitating consciousness. Like we wanted to
Mm.
do that together.
Mm.
And here I'm doing this, traveling the world, meeting beautiful people all over the world, on this journey of consciousness, and it's such a gift to be able to have all these friends all over the world. That was like our dream together. And so I knew she was part of that. And she would show up in classes too. She would say, you know what? These tools have the power, if people are willing to receive it, to change the face of mental illness on the planet. But people have to
Mm.
choose it. And I just started to cry and I weep because I was like, oh my God, you're not here. You don't have the body anymore. But then Gary's like, no, she got the healing just in spirit.
Mhm.
And that was beautiful and very freeing. And yeah, so that's sort of like the ways that she would show up to me. And then she shows up to me in like impressions and
Mhm.
and sort of like in pictures and stuff like that.
Mm. Cool. So you said something like, especially what she said, like this potentially could heal mental illness. I think that one of the reasons why I wanted to do this series was because I know a lot of people they are aware, right, and then they're like, oh crap, I must be going crazy.
Yeah.
So, and obviously your wife didn't have that. I'm going to say former wife because I know you have a new
Yeah.
wife. For
Yeah.
your former wife didn't know that. But so how, like, for somebody who's like thinking, okay, I'm going crazy, or I suffer from mental illness, what would be a recommendation that you would have for them?
Well, look, one of the first things we say, in access, or one of the mantras is consciousness includes everything and judges nothing.
Mm.
And I look, I always choose natural and holistic things first, before I even consider looking at a medicine. Okay. But I'm also not crazy. I'm not going to like not take medicine because then somehow it invalidates me as a holistic practitioner, and I used to actually be righteous in that way. Do I believe medicine is overprescribed? Absolutely. Do I believe things need to change within the pharmaceutical industry, big pharma? Absolutely. But I'm also glad we do live in 2025 if we should need medication for whatever reason. So I just want to put that out there. But what I would say to people that have this, I would first say, what if these quote unquote mental illness or health challenges are actually a superpower you have and a capacity that's going unexpressed. And because it's unexpressed and everything is energy, it's kind of getting twisted against you.
Right.
So what if there was a way to, what if it was mental awareness that you're having an issue with, not mental illness? And what, some people's brains are sensitive. They just are, but it doesn't mean they're broken. Right now, again, if someone's had head trauma and they have like brain damage, that's another conversation.
Right.
But I'm talking about people like me and you that are struggling with panic attacks, insomnia, fibromyalgia, bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, and look, I'm not saying that sometimes they don't, they need, some people do need to take their medicine, you know what I mean? And what else besides that?
Right.
It's like, what are they actually aware of when they're talking to spirits and ghosts? What if they're there?
Right.
Just because you can't see it doesn't mean they're not there. And what if they can be taught how to make their interaction with the spirit world in a way to where they're not at the effect of it? To where it's not ruining their life or dictating their lives.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. So some of you have heard my story, but like when I became a clairvoyant medium, I then resisted it for 3 years. And over 3 years started to become more and more depressed. And then I realized I needed to lean in. Like, okay, there was a reason that this came on me at 30. So I'm going to just accept it. But as soon as I did that, as soon as I was just like, okay, whatever reason, I just accept this, the depression went away, and even the pressure of the awareness went away. So I love what you said there about like, what can you acknowledge? Like, what capacity do you have that you could just acknowledge first, and say.
Truly. And I remember when I first heard this for the first time, and it was in an entities class, your awareness is not a curse. It's your superpower. But unfortunately, for a lot of us, it shows up as a curse because it doesn't fit into the constructs of this reality.
Right.
It just doesn't. Now, and then you have very religious people that believe in the supernatural and all that, but as long as it's within their box of that religion, right? And so anything outside of that is automatically put in the category of demonic and evil. Well, what if that was a myth? So you see people struggling with things that are beyond, let's say, the boxes that they've decided is right. And unfortunately, we've lost people because of that. But there's an infinite universe out there. How can anything be absolute? I mean, but they're really just pragmatic tools to help people have more ease with what they're actually aware of, to empower people to know what they know, regardless if other people know it. And it's like, what if you're not as fucked up as you think you are, or everybody else is telling you are?
Right. Yeah. How do you know you're not crazy? Awesome. Okay. Thank you, Anthony. We're going to just take a really quick break and then we're going to come back. But for those of you who would like to call in and have questions, please feel free to call 202-570-7057. We'll also go ahead and go through those comments on the side when we get back. Thank you for being here. We'll be right back.
Om Times TV. Imagine becoming a super influencer. Reinvent yourself, invest in your brand, and then manifest your success with a robust spheric approach. Om Times Media and Broadcasting offers a unique and multifaceted way to become the spiritual and conscious influencer you deserve to be. By putting your message across our powerful platform, with its proven record of integrity and excellence. Through our produced shows, Om Times offers the opportunity to become a social media TV personality, a radio show host, an Om Times magazine columnist, and a syndicated podcaster, all in one shot. By live streaming your show on Om Times TV and broadcasting it across the extensive Om Times radio and TV networks, you become more than a host. You become an ambassador and a force for positive change. Om Times. Open yourself to the possibilities.
If I could be you, and you could be me for just 1 hour. If we could find a way to get inside each other's minds. Walk a mile in my shoes. Walk a mile in my shoes. Well, before you abuse, criticize, and accuse, walk a mile in my shoes.
Hello, everyone. Again, welcome forward. I just want to acknowledge some people that are out there. Hello, Rain, Kimberly, Holly, Amanda, Lindsay, Bob. Really nice to see you all. So thank you very much for being here. Kelly asked a question a little bit while back. You were talking about the bars, and she says, is that tapping?
No, it's its own unique thing that I guess, I don't know, it was created like 33, 35 years ago by Gary Douglas. So it's its own unique, because I've done tapping. I've done that as well, but bars is its own baby. You're actually just holding these contacts. You're asking the energies to run, and then once they dissipate and move on, then settle down, then you go to the next set of bars. It's its own baby.
Yeah, and it's an amazing modality. So you can go to accessconsciousness.com and learn all about it. And they have lots of tools, but bars saved my life, saved Dr. Dane here was contemplating suicide and had his bars run once and never thought about it again. My stepdaughter, same thing, twice. She had her bars run twice and she never thought about suicide or self-harming again. So it's a really powerful way of letting go of that anxiety. You know, that a lot of people are just, we're just so aware, right? We're so aware of everybody else's stuff, and then we think it's ours, and then we can't change it because it's not ours. So, so if you guys have any inkling to doing the bars or finding out more about it, go to accessconscious.com. Amanda said, I also had a bad entity attached to me. And it wasn't really a question, but I could really see how maybe there's somebody out there that's like, I've had something like that happen. What do I do? Do you have any recommendations of what something you could do?
Yeah, you have to destroy and uncreate. Well, the first thing that pops is you need to ask, is there some sort of oath and vow that you've made with this entity in one lifetime or another, or maybe this one? So one of the first things we learn, we talk to the entities, is entities attaching themselves to you doesn't just happen randomly. There was something that you chose during your infinite being lifetime or timeline that you made a choice to have this other entity or being attached to you. So, and it could be a gazillion and one reasons, and you don't necessarily have to know what those reasons are. But typically when you find it difficult to get rid of entities or disconnect for ones that are trying to attach themselves to you, there's some sort of a vow and a commitment and like a fealty, like a blood oath that you've made with this being. So in Access, we teach you certain clearings to break those contracts once and for all. And what's really beautiful about it, it really helps to empower you to step up and say, hey, this relationship is over. And what's cool is it actually transitions into your everyday life. Like, you know, some of you out there, like I was one of those people that would always choose really horrible relationships, but I would never leave them. I would still just take the abuse.
Me
You
too.
know, and it's like, what the frig, right? But what starts to happen is you start to become empowered, and then eventually I started being like, you know what, I don't need this abuse anymore. I can walk away from this. And you can do that with the spirit world too, you know. And so there's a lot of different reasons, and you can get very sophisticated in how you get rid of them sometimes, but it's all through question. question, so we can get these pings of awarenesses and explore.
Awesome. Yeah. Being in question, like being curious, just like explore, like, okay, what is this? Like, yeah, that's great.
But
So,
and let me
yeah, go
share something
ahead.
about my late wife though too. It's like part of the
Sure.
reason why she was hopeless as well is because, like, you think her point of view is, Jesus is the ultimate, right?
Mhm.
So if she's demon possessed, which is what she thought,
Right.
and we were doing Jesus and loving Jesus. She was on the praise and worship team. I mean, like, we were told the Bible says you're only supposed to have faith the grain of a mustard seed. Well, hers was at
Mhm.
least the size of a watermelon. Okay. That those kinds of things don't happen to you. And I'm like, well, that this isn't lining up here. And so had we known about these particular tools, I know we would have been able to change that. And because she felt that the demon was more powerful than her, especially if Jesus didn't help her, right? So she felt like she was damaged.
Gotcha.
Sorry, this is what God's plan was for her, and that she's just a lost cause. She might as well cash in the chips, and that was her point of view.
Right. Well, and I think a lot of people,
Uh-oh, did I
it's
lose
like
you?
can you hear me now? Oh, maybe he'll come back. I'm sure he'll come back. But yeah, I mean, a lot of times we think.
Oh,
There?
I didn't hear you. You were frozen on your end. Sorry about that.
Okay, that's okay. So yeah, I was just kind of re-emphasizing what you're saying is like people have these experiences and that they can't define them or they can't understand them, and so then they think that they're going crazy, right? So it's just like
Yeah.
we're here today. One of the things I just really want to get across is you're not crazy, and it's just a matter of maybe finding tools, maybe finding classes, things that can help you kind of work through whatever might be going on mentally. So.
And there's no spirit out there more powerful than you unless you have the point of view that it is so. So remember that one too.
Yeah, that's a great one. So, Lindsay says, man, this is great. Such helpful articulation to things I've wanted to say to people who want help. Thanks. That's awesome, Lindsay. Yep. But it looks like Simon gets an image of your wife with you now wearing a white dress, but it's mostly blue and big blue roses. That's awesome.
Seems like something she would wear.
He said brown, long, straight hair, and I see hazel eyes. So, yeah.
Thank you.
So how long is break? Okay, cool. Yeah, and so for those of you who would like to call in and ask Anthony questions, please don't be shy. 202-570-7057. Cool. So let's talk a little bit about the Talk to the Entities class. Why don't you talk a little bit about like what's involved? What does that help people with?
Well, yeah, I mean, so it's just really a set of pragmatic tools to help you to have ease with the spirit world and to empower you to know what you know. And it's not just only about clearing entities and like going, get away, because entities have choice too. And so a lot of the program is like taking the myths and the superstitions out of the whole conversation about spirits and whatnot. Also to empower people to recognize that, again, in only if you have the point of view that an entity is stronger or more powerful than you, then you can be attacked or possessed or whatever if you have that point of view. So it's to try to shift people's point of view to where you can be the boss entity of your own life. You just happen to have a body right now. But it's really learning how to not only clear the ones who are ready to go, but to also communicate with them in a way that creates space. Like it's like they get what they need and require from you, or some of them want to contribute to you as well. Um, it's also accessing your teammates, or some people refer to them as their guardian angels. It's also recognizing the beings of light, that they're around too. A lot of times people, when they think of the spirit world, they only think about it as like demons only, you know what I mean? It's a vast array of different kinds of beings. It's not just bad ones. you know. But then what do you do when there are the bad ones, right? And so we learn specific clearings that have been pretty effective in getting rid of the demonic ones. Those you don't want to mess with really ever. You want to send them back to from whence they came. And then sometimes looking at where you may have these oaths and vows with some of these beings and stuff that are no longer relevant to you in this lifetime. So it's like letting go of those oaths and vows and those commitments and whatnot. So yeah, these are the kind of things that we learn. I like to teach it in a very pragmatic way because I'm also a body facilitator and a body worker. And one of the first things we learn in Access is, for every thought, feeling, and emotion you have, 99% of the time it doesn't belong to you. So we're picking up on these little whispers of hundreds of thousands of people, but not just with bodies, beings too, right? So a lot of the things that are coming into your head, it's not yours. So we like to explore if you're struggling with anxiety or depression, or let's just say anger, or your brain, you're having one of those days where you feel like this for no reason. Why am I feeling like this? It's like, okay, who does this belong to? There's a bunch of entities that are around. Some of them are struggling with PTSD. And then we teach you clearings to help undo the PTSD. Maybe they died suddenly. Maybe they died on drugs and alcohol. Some of the drugs and alcohol, even though they don't have a body, is still imprinted in their energetic universe. So there's so many different things where sometimes you need to get specific with certain entities that you're dealing with. We also learn these downloading exercise where like you're aware of hundreds of thousands of beings at the same time. You can't deal with them one-on-one. So we have this wonderful downloading exercise in which you can facilitate a bunch of them. Then we look at portals, right? Portals are like doorways from one dimension to the next, which by the way, they're talking about these things with regards to the UFO stuff, right? And how these beings are coming in, it's like trans-dimensional with the spaceships and that's a whole nother conversation for somebody else. But I'm like, wow, okay, cool. But it's like we're learning how to close portals. Now, some portals are good. They're part of the Earth's natural biology. You don't want to mess with those, right? In the United States, we refer to them as like vortexes and stuff like that. But then you have these other artificially induced portals that we learn how to close and get rid of them. Sometimes people can be portals. Sometimes people's bodies are used, but not so friendly people, let's say, or other beings from other dimensions and realities. They use your body as a way to fulfill their agenda. And so we look at that, people, especially people who are like clear entities all day long, they communicate with them all day long, and yet they still feel overwhelmed. In some instances, we ask, are you a portal? And then if they say yes, we ask, okay, well, how's that working for you? Is this something you'd like to change? So we never make people change anything. We always ask, hey, do you want to change this? Or if you do, great, we have tools for it. So yeah, we learn how to clear, communicate. The ones who desire to contribute to you, hey, why not? I'll receive from an entity. It's not evil, right? To receive to the ones that are kind and caring and actually have something they'd like to gift you. Why not? I'll take it from wherever I can get it. And then sometimes you do have to cooperate. You do have some stubborn beings that aren't leaving the house. It's their house from their point of view, right? And you try to reason with them, be like, yo, you don't even have a body anymore. Why do you need shelter, right? We have this strange point of view that because somebody dies, all of a sudden they wake up and become more conscious. Well, what if that was a myth? What if they're just as ignorant as they were when they had a body? So yeah, you actually learn how to facilitate and wake up certain beings and try to speak logic and pragmatics into their universe. It's, hey, it's not 1883 anymore. You don't need a house. I'm thankful that you built this beautiful antique home.
Right.
I promise I'll take care of it. But some of them are like, I'm not leaving my house. But then you have to like form some sort of negotiation. Like, okay, fine, then you need to contribute to the mortgage or the rent here, because this doesn't work for me for you to be around, right? So, and look, because I was the person that's like, this is not a capacity of mine. I thought I was making half this shit up. But you know what? I'm like, you know what? what if my imagination is not imagination? What if it is awareness?
Mm,
So what is it going to destroy if I just go along with what I'm saying? Like, the worst that can happen is nothing will change. As long as I don't do this out in public where people are hearing me, then they'll like bring in the people with the white coats and stuff and send me away. But I do
right.
this in my own privacy during like my special time that I have with them, right?
Mhm.
And all of a sudden I started noticing, here I am thinking I'm inventing it, but I'm like, I'm just gonna use these tools, and all of a sudden my headache goes away that I was having right before I had, what we call our business hours or our awareness hours.
Right.
And on other days, I'm like, oh my God, my anxiety's gone. But it
Mm,
wasn't mine, it was theirs. Because then
right.
I would be like, oh, what are you afraid of? My ADD, my ADHD that have been labeled having. I'm like, oh my God, what if that was my awareness of hundreds of thousands of beings all around me? And that's why I could never focus.
Right.
So then I started like using that to my advantage. And I'm like,
Mm.
holy crap, oh my God, what if my ADD was like a superpower the whole time? Right. And so I started using that when I would have these business hours or awareness hours. And then I was like, I think I'm a lot more psychic than I ever thought. I can do the spirit stuff. So now, like, I'm not a psychic ball reader or anything like that, but I can effectively go into a house and if I did that again, not knowing what I was doing, and all of a sudden I started getting these downloads. And I
Mm,
started asking questions, and I'm like, what's wrong with, there's something going on with this street. It just
mm,
like, it went from being beautiful and orgasmic on a certain part of this person's property to all of a sudden like just yucky, like
mm,
depressive. And then the homeowner goes, oh, do you know what the town calls this road? I'm like, no, what? She goes, they call it Ghost Road. I'm like, no way. Why? Why do they call it Ghost Road? She's like, because this is where the slaves would walk through. And I'm like, and then I remember learning about like some entities are just passing through, but it's
right.
sort of like they're in a trance.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, and it totally matched the energy of what I was aware of, but I just didn't have the information. So I don't know. I mean, if this sounds fun for you, some of you already know you have a capacity. Great. These tools are just going to make your life way easier. And
Right.
then for those of you other people that might be struggling or whatever, even body workers, if you want more information on how to help or facilitate your people with body stuff, this
Mm-hmm.
information could be really, really valuable because maybe some of people's body stuff or mental stuff has to do with their awareness of the spirit world that they're not acknowledging.
Mm.
So that and more.
Yeah, it's so much more. Yep. Yeah. I mean, I became a clairvoyant medium when I turned 30, 23 years ago. I didn't find access until 9 years ago. So I was for 13 years, stabbing in the dark. Like, what am I doing? What am I aware of? What do I do with this? Like, I just had no clue. Right. So finding access consciousness and finding talk to the entities, it really just gave me like, oh, this is what I'm aware of, and oh, this is just some tools and like how to deal with it, right?
Yep,
And then also
that's it.
just like access consciousness in general for me was always like, oh, I'm not crazy, like because it opens up so much about like how aware we really are of
Yeah.
everyone and everything around us. So,
Yep.
um,
Yep.
yep. And I just heard, a little bird told me that Anthony is having a Talk to the Entities intro beginning an intermediate class starting February 20th through the 23rd. And then that's in Mexico City and online. And
Yep.
then also he's having one in Rome and online March 27th through the 30th. So if you guys would like any more information on that, you can go to dranthonymattis.com/events and you can see them. We'll also post that in the comments below for those of you who are interested. Even if you just start with the intro, like I highly recommend just go to the intro and see what it's
Yeah.
all about. You don't have to choose the whole thing, but I get so much even just from the intros of like 2 hours, right? Like 2 hour
Yeah. Yeah,
intro. Yeah.
exactly. You'll definitely
Yeah.
get tools on how we clear entities and even demons. just so you could actually have some space. So
Nice.
you're going to learn a lot just in the intro. But the beginning class is sort of like the central nervous, it's like the brain and the spinal cord and the nerves, It's like it's the blueprint for really learning how to clear, communicate, receive, and negotiate or cooperate with the spirit world. And at the end of the day, it's just to make your life easier.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. So Simon says, this question, I don't want to upset you, but I know Anthony, you can't upset him. But would you be where you are today if she was still here? Because I think she knew.
Yeah, no, that doesn't upset me at all. I mean, I'll never forget. Yeah, that's why I said is the whole thing's like a double-edged sword. It's like been a blessing, and on certain times it feels like a curse, even today,
Mhm.
because the kids still go through their stuff, and even though I'm remarried, and I did happen to marry someone half my age, younger, so it was a big undertaking for her to come in, and she's been such a gift. Her name is Julia, and she's been such a gift and contribution to our family, but it was a big undertaking to come in here. And so I do still have moments where I'm like, you left me to deal with this stuff alone. But at the same time, I'll never forget, it was about 2.5 years into Access at my very first facilitators. It was like day 3, and the energies were so intense. And I remember I just fell to my knees. And in that moment, it was like everything started pulsating, like everything from the pavement to the flowers to the grass to the blades of grass, the colors, which just everything was so vibrant. And in that moment is when I started having tears of gratitude flowing.
Mm.
And I thanked her for creating the space, because in that moment, 2.5 years into doing Access, I realized Access is more than just getting you through your pain and suffering, that there's actual palpable magic to this. And when I say magic, I feel like I'm simplifying and it sounds so silly, but there's just something so unique to this work on an energetic level that's not really explainable. And magic's the only word that I can describe, but it's something else. And I was like, thank you for creating this space for me to receive this work. Because God knows where I would have, what path, maybe we would have just chosen a different church or find a different guru or something and whatever. But yeah, so no, I don't get mad at that. I've looked at that, and there have been moments where I've had extreme gratitude for her making that choice. And there are times where I still today miss her dearly. And sometimes I'm like, you know what? There are times I'd like to take a break from parenting, like you do it. And I have said it to her. I'm like, you know what? You're there. You need to speak into their world. Stop coming to me. You need to talk to them. You need to nudge them, being like, what are you fucking doing here? So it's all the above.
Well, and he so eloquently pointed out too, by the way, today is 2/11. 2/11s.
Look at that. Figures. Figures.
I was like, I never thought about that way, but there you go. 11/11.
Yeah.
So that's great. Well, thank you, Anthony. Was there anything else, like if somebody's out there and just like, but you just don't know what I'm going through, and I really feel like I'm going crazy, what would your recommendation be for them?
There's hope. Just know that there's hope. There's always hope. And again, your point of view will create your reality. And I understand you may feel like you're going crazy, but there are tools out there. And whether it's Access Consciousness or not, or another set of tools, just don't give up. If you do certain tools and they're not enough, there's more out there. And more people are stepping into this thing called consciousness, and they have their own different modalities and all that stuff. So just go out and explore and find the ones that work for you. But like the reason why I'm doing Access for 13 years now is because so far these have been the strongest set of tools I've ever personally come across. And it keeps going and it keeps going and it keeps going, because there's always more work to do too. So but check it out. Get your bars run. Get your bars run. Find this practitioners all over the world. Access is in 170 something different countries. Get your bars run, because that is truly a gift, and it will help, basically, very least, de-scramble your brain.
Yeah, Totally. Is give you some ease, just maybe some ease. Yeah. And by all means, look up Anthony, DrAnthonyMattis.com. He's really doing a lot with access consciousness. He does energy work, opening the symphony classes. And it's like moving. Why don't you talk about it? What do you?
Just check out my website. I think we've downloaded, if the energy, like if hearing me create some sort of a spark of curiosity, yeah, go to the website because there's videos and all that stuff you could watch. And yeah, come play the Talk to the Entities intro. It's awesome because I do give a lot of tools in that class. And but if you're out there struggling, please find a bars practitioner or bars facilitator. Just go to the accessconsciousness.com website and just click on your respective country. If it's the United States, in your state, and just type in bars facilitating and get your bars run. And yeah, that right there is the beginning of something real special.
That's awesome. Well, thank you, Anthony. I'm so grateful for you. Thank you for taking the
My
time.
pleasure. Thanks for having me. I always enjoyed being with you.
You too. I hope you all found some value in this, and please don't hesitate to send questions if you have any follow-up questions or you want to know how to find Anthony. We'll get you the links. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Bye.